For better or worse, school is back, and the role of paraprofessionals in inclusive classrooms. All this and more on this edition of the Weeklyish. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Tim Villegas. 2022 is off to a strange start, with the vast majority of schools opening to in-person learning this week. Yet COVID-19 continues to cause headaches, both literally and figuratively, to families and school personnel. As educator Katie Faber tweeted just days ago, at non_toxic_kids, I have no words to describe what it is like to be a teacher right now. For this edition of the Weeklyish, I wanted to share a resource that caught my eye over the last couple of months that I think deserves your attention. This is from the TIES Center, the National Technical Assistance Center on Inclusive Practices and Policies. What, you haven't heard of them? If you haven't, make sure you sign up for their updates. In October of last year, they published a brief called Understanding the Role of Paraprofessionals in Your Child's Education in Inclusive Classrooms. Image description. Cover of TIES Center Brief number 7. A teacher is giving a high five to a student in a classroom filled with children. Text reads, Understanding the Role of Paraprofessionals in Your Child's Education in Inclusive Classrooms. TIES Center, Ricky Saby, and Martha L. Thurlow. The use of paraprofessionals when implementing inclusive education can be a controversial topic. And when I was supporting schools, district administrators have told me more than once that if a student with an intellectual disability has a paraprofessional helping them in a regular classroom, how is that appropriate or fair to the other students? How are they going to learn independence? To both of these inquiries, I call hogwash, or as Lou Brown puts it, baloney. These questions assume that a paraprofessional is solely dedicated to a student with a disability and has no role or interaction with the other students in the classroom. If that is your idea of inclusive practices, we have some unlearning to do. Here is how the authors of the TIES Center brief put it. Individualized education program teams may push back on a request for a paraprofessional. They may point to limited resources or claim that a paraprofessional makes the general education classroom a more restrictive environment. These arguments are not valid. The paraprofessional decision must be based on what an individual student needs to have a satisfactory education in the general education classroom. This brief outlines what qualities paraprofessionals should have and what support and training they need to succeed in their role. It also provides some examples of the appropriate use of paraprofessionals in inclusive classrooms and some red flags that might indicate a change in how they support students or what kind of training they need. For instance, paraprofessionals should have high expectations for the student, as well as knowledge of the individual student's strengths and interests, and how to build on them. Paraprofessionals should be part of the instructional team, working under the direction of the special education teacher or specialist, using modifications and adapted materials that will support the student's independence. Their role isn't only to support academics, but also to facilitate social interactions with non-disabled peers. Some red flags that the TIES authors note are if the paraprofessional completes the student's work for them, or if the student becomes more isolated and dependent on adults instead of supporting independence and peer interaction. Another thing to think about is that if your school district's plan to promote inclusive practices is simply hire more paraprofessionals, then there's a misunderstanding of the bigger picture. In an inclusive system, students with disabilities are scheduled in a classroom across grade levels in natural proportions. Special and general education teachers are given time to collaborate and plan for all students, and paraprofessionals are used efficiently to support those students. I remember having a conversation with a colleague when I was working to include students from my own segregated special education classroom in general education classrooms. They said, If the district is going to get serious about including students with significant disabilities in Gen Ed, they better be prepared to hire a bunch of one-on-ones. No, this is not what I mean, or the TIE Center for that matter. In his 2010 article called One-to-One Paraprofessionals for Students with Disabilities in Inclusive Classrooms, Is Conventional Wisdom Wrong?, Michael Giangreco states, in many cases, the advocacy for assigning one-to-one paraprofessional support is reactive. A variety of alternatives have been suggested, such as resource reallocation, co-teaching, increasing ownership of general educators and their capacity to include students with disabilities, transitional paraprofessional pools, reassigning paraprofessional roles, lowering special educator caseloads to increase their opportunity to provide support in the classroom, and peer supports. Please carve out some time to look at the TIE Center brief on the role of paraprofessionals in inclusive classrooms. And if you are a school administrator who is looking for training for paraprofessionals, MCIE has professional development that we can customize for your needs. Email us at mcie@mcie.org or visit mcie.org for more information. That will do it for this edition of the Weeklyish. If you want more, visit thinkinclusive.us, the official blog of MCIE, or visit mcie.org. Please comment, like, follow, or subscribe. Thank you for your time and attention. And remember, inclusion always works. Go Dogs.